This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In podcast. I'm your host, Max Rabin.
And I'm Mattia Dafuso.
Mattia is here today, our guest host. Brent is away, and I'm not in the studio because guess what? I have COVID again. And it's like a mild case, but I can't be in there talking with you guys directly, and I apologize.
Well,
for
we
that.
miss you, Max.
Thank you, Mattia. Really appreciate that. Today, our guest is Trent Heminger. Trent Heminger is yet another heavy hitter in the DC real estate market. This is another name where if you know DC real estate, you know Trent Heminger. He does a ton of new condo sales. I was just looking at his numbers here on our sheet. If this is correct, his team had $258 million worth of sales and 332 transactions in 2021. Is that right, Trent?
That's what they tell me. Yeah.
That's what they tell you.
Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. So you work with a lot of developers, and we just want to know more about how you do your business. And welcome to the show, Trent.
Well, thanks. It's fun to be here.
We're glad to have you.
I know we're missing Max in person, but he looks just as cute as ever.
Right.
Yeah. And I've known him
I have
for
a lot
long
of
time.
control over how I look when I'm at home. I
Yeah,
think
that's
the
good lighting. That's
Yeah, you
actually
have better
really good
lighting,
lighting.
yeah.
Don't you
You have
think
a
it's
ring
not
light
fair?
for sure.
Yeah, definitely better lighting than we have. It's I think it was done on purpose.
You guys should see the setup I have in here. It's quite something.
Yeah.
So Trent, let's just start from the beginning. Tell us about how long you've been in real estate, how you got started, and where the journey began.
Yeah, so I'll try to see, how do I start? I moved to DC with a different career, like a lot of us. Wasn't planning on being in real estate, but loved it. With that said, this was, by the way, I found an apartment at the end of 2019 going into 2020. I moved here in January 2020. The reason I moved here in 2019 and rented an apartment instead of purchasing because I thought everything was so expensive.
2019.
I'm sorry.
2019.
My Botox are working, right? So I just let's rewind. How about what's before 1999? How about that? So 1999, 20 years
1999.
before. Okay. I'm just looking at Max. He looks the same. So no, actually, excuse me. 1999, before 2000. So I came here in the fall of 1999 thinking I would buy a property because my company was moving me and they're going to pay my expenses, et cetera. And I was like, oh, it's so expensive. I think I'll rent for a year. So fast forward, I signed a year's lease, and by March of 2000, so not even 3 months in, I bought my first property, got out of my lease, had to find a new tenant. And by the end of that year, I had bought 2 rental properties and put money down on another property. And I was like, I think I should get my real estate license. So I did. And so within the first 12 months of living here in 2000, I bought a property, moved into it, bought 2 rentals, bought a pre-construction, which, by the way, if anyone's listening and they know where Harrison Square townhomes are, like, I lived right next to them when they were being built, and then purchased one and moved into it. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So with that said, by let me rewind. Yeah. By 2001, by January, give or take, I had my license, and I actually got my license. They were first at TTR, the original pre-Sotheby's, and Max was there. We were
Tut, Taylor, and Rankin Real Estate before it was TTR Sotheby's.
You're right. And you're right. We always called it Tut, Taylor, Rankin. Right. But I forgot about that. So now it seems like a mouthful. But back in the day. So I was there, and I had still had a full-time job, which I had for like 6 months. And it was, I worked for Kellogg's, the cereal company. So that was the first time I ever had out of college. I was kind of on their fast track program, which is what they had back then. Now that's, I think, pretty non-existent. So I had gone from Cincinnati, where I went to college at Xavier University, to Michigan. I was there for 7 months. They moved me to Louisville, Kentucky. I was there for a year. I ended up here in DC, and but I was the only, like, I was a sales rep, and so without getting into all those details, so I didn't have a boss that lived anywhere near me or colleagues, so I could sell real estate. So basically, I did both, but it was kind of a crazy time in the market in that 2001 timeframe. And Max is shaking his head because he remembers. And so
There was a
by-
lot just getting started right then, and people were sort of rediscovering the DC real estate market at that time. Prices had been kind of depressed in the 1990s, and then new development started. A lot of new money started coming into DC in 2000, 2001.
Exactly. So it was a good time. And so by June, I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is too much. So I remember I grew up in Ohio on a farm, by the way. So I remember telling my parents, like, okay, I'm going to quit. Like, I was going to do this. And of course, my parents were like, what? You work for this big company and you got your insurance, you have your free car. By the way, a beautiful hunter green Pontiac Grand Prix is what I was driving around with Rice Krispie treats and Pop-Tarts in the background. So who doesn't, or back of the trunk. So who doesn't want to hire a real estate agent that's going to like load you up with carbs, right? So that was before carbs were bad. So it was awesome. Was very popular, and but I made the plunge, and I went full time into real estate at that point. I went, and I mean, I don't know how, that's a lot of background, but I left Taylor Rankin at that time to move over to Caldwell Banker because I worked under as a buyer's agent for Jim Bell, which again Max knows. Like that was kind of like it was a little controversial, but I felt like it was a good move for me, and it was. I learned a lot of things, and I was there for a year with Jim, and then at that point went out on my own. And within a few months of going out on my own, realizing I was really good at selling, but I hated paperwork. Like I hated paperwork then. Now I don't even know like zip form. I don't even know what zip forms are. But so I hired my first assistant, Rita Stella, and Max remembers Rita.
I remember all this now.
Oh,
I remember you,
this?
like
Yeah.
really,
like
needing
it was
some
yesterday.
help.
So tell me, you got your license, and then, why TTR or Taylor Rankin at the time, and what did you get? So you showed up at the office and you said, "I'm a new agent. You should hire me," or like,
Yeah, good
what was that
question.
like?
No, that would be that's so not real estate agent
Right.
like, right? So actually, my real estate agent at the time, who was a big figure, and I say big figure is because Max and I know his name was Humberto Gonzalez.
Oh
and
my God.
He's one of those, if you meet him once, you will remember him for literally the rest of your
I've
life.
heard stories about him.
Oh, there's lots of stories. And so he was my agent. He's very charismatic. So it's kind of hard not to love him when you first meet him. So I met him at an open house and I was like, okay, he's my new friend. So he's the one that said, you should get your license. And so I kind of came in and kind of was going to work under him. I think the difference is, and I can say this, he's no longer in real estate, but if we all know, he did very well. Talk about charm, like he could win all awards, but definitely not someone that had an organization to him. And myself, that probably also would not win awards for being the most organized. What I am is I'm organized because I know how to delegate to be organized. And so I was like, this is not like, I can't quit my job and run a team, and this is not going to work. So I really hadn't necessarily planned on leaving. And Jim Bell came and spoke to me. And again, without going back like 20 years, literally 20 years, Max knows that Jim made a transition from the mortgage business into real estate. And when Jim makes anything that comes to marketing or transitions, it's a big splash. And so he was everywhere. And I remember as a brand new agent showing up showing up on a Sunday to take my clients. And there was a sign on the door that said, already under contract. And I was like, WTF, who is this a-hole? And so I actually, at some point, I did a multiple offer with Jim and I lost. And he remembered me, called me to lunch, and he's pretty convincing. And next thing I know, I'm like quitting, and it was a big decision. I always say I don't do many things lightly, and I've made a lot of transitions through my 20 years. But I knew it would not go over well with Humberto, let alone within the Taylor Rankin office, et cetera, because at that point, Jim was probably not someone that you would think. It was just a sore subject, but he was doing very well.
Yeah.
But it was what I felt was a good move for me, and definitely a good transition. Now, with that said, I would say Jim was really good, but looking back, like I might have negotiated better than Jim because I had to buy this new construction property at the end of that calendar year. So, I mean, I had a pretty good salary. I had a pretty good, so I did quite well. And I think, you know, I negotiated myself into a good transition, and it made a lot of sense from a career standpoint. It was definitely, you know, it was a little bit more touch and go because Umberto and I were really good friends. But you know, what is it? All ends well that starts, whatever that saying is.
Something.
Here we are. Yeah.
But yeah, we had Jim Bell on the show early on. He was one of our first guests, and we talked about all of his different career stuff and the controversy of how he was in the mortgage business and switched to real estate agency, and then also his new brokerage that he started. And you went to work at his new brokerage too, if I'm not correct. Is that right?
I did. Actually, I was a partner. And again, like once Jim and I stopped working together, I mean, our businesses probably now we could definitely run into each other through business. But at that point, like I was like first time home buyers, and Jim was like, you know, what's his thing, King of Colorama, whatever it was,
right.
like, yeah, like his goals were always to go to the higher end market. So we literally did not run into each other for like 10 years, give or take. And actually, it was a social event that we ran into each other, and then he called me out or called me and wanted to know if I wanted to have dinner. And by the way, if you, especially back then, if you said, do you want to have dinner and that involves cocktails, I pretty much would meet anyone, or would have then. I still would. So so there I was. I actually thought we were going just to catch up and talk about personal stuff. And next thing I know, he's telling me about Beasley. By the way, Max, because at that point I was back at Sotheby's with a big stint in new construction in the middle of it. Max and I shared like this addict office, right? Like I'm fine, but Max is almost hitting his head, and you know, when he's still there because that's why he's so thin. It's a lot of stairs. A lot, like when you're on your cell phone, like and you're talking to a client, by the time you get to the third floor, you have to pause and take a deep breath, right? Max is still in good shape, and I just have elevator buildings and have to run outside of work. But with that said, so Max knows this is where I bring this up. So I walk out of the Sotheby's little attic office, go down to the Four Seasons. By the way, I would never at that point, even today, not much, but never go to the Four Seasons. But Jim Bell, like the Four Seasons is like Jim Bell, right? Like I'm like Chipotle or, you know, whatever it is, if they served alcohol at that time. So with that said, here we are, couple martinis. He tells me about Beasley, and anyhow, I'm walking back to the office, and now it's like 9 o'clock at night, and I call Kevin Gray. I say Kevin, but Kevin Gray, who has been on my team forever. And at that time in my career, it was just Kevin and myself. I'm like, okay, you're going to think this is crazy. I know you're not going to like this, but I think this is what we're going to do. And of course, Kevin, I know when you're listening to this, we all know this. You're like an old lady, and you would still be with Max up in the office, though Max is not an old lady, if up in the attic, if it wasn't for me, like, making him do things. And so there we were. And I mean, it was kind of a fast track. I mean, that was probably in middle to end of October at the earliest. I feel like it might have been even November, and Beasley was launched by February 1st. So it was a fun experience. Yeah.
Give me the time frame for that again. What year was that?
So I can tell you. No, I can't tell you. Yeah. So that would have been. This is when you know you're old and you do everything by your kid's age. So I'm pretty sure it was 2011. Corey, do you know? Was it 2011? So did we launch in 12? Yeah. So it was like the fall of 2011. And we launched in February 1st of 2012, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always think it's interesting to talk about the time frames when, especially for someone who has had a long career like you, when these things happen, because now that we've had some hindsight with the different markets to think about what was happening in the market and up markets, down markets, you know, it's just interesting to think about when you're making these moves, especially right now in light of like how things are changing so much. That's all.
Yeah. Well, and you know, for me, again, I don't know, this was a podcast, right? We can cut whatever we want, but we as in you all, because I'm just lucky to get here. So, but Kevin and I had been, actually, I want to say we were hitting just the 3-year mark, being back at that time it was then, not Taylor Rankin, but TTR Sotheby's. So it was about our 3-year mark. We had transitioned literally in December of 08. So if I don't even care if you were in real estate, as long as you were born and have any idea of finances, like the market was just going down in 08, and then the stock market crashed in September. And at that point I was doing a lot of new construction sales. And so like no one was buying new construction, and I wasn't in charge of the developers like I am now, which we'll probably get to. So I needed a change. Not to mention, did I tell you that the stock market crashed? My income's like cut in half that year, and the year before it was cut in half, and I had twin daughters born December 13th. So once we got into November, I called Rita, who was still with us, and it was just Rita and myself, and Kevin was actually only like, he was on the team, but kind of doing certain things. And I was like, we're done. Like, we're leaving. Like, you call 2 people, I call 2 people. Let's figure this out. And of course, first call was to Michael Rankin. And I think I called Rita an hour later. I'm like, yeah, I think this is what we're doing. And here we were. But fast forward almost 3 years to the mark later, Kevin and Rita had left to go to nursing school, which was that's a whole nother thing. Like the worst thing I've ever been through in real estate. When you have someone that runs your life for 8 years and like, I need a career change, that sucks. But you know, I still love her. I was just in Italy with her in April, so she's my baby. But Kevin and I were growing, but Kevin and I were not going to take our own business to the next level without someone really helping us do so. And we just weren't getting that where we were at the time because the market was starting to move forward, and, you know, companies were trying to catch up with the market. And once I met with Jim, if anyone knows Jim's business, the one thing Jim does in his sleep better than almost anyone I know is market. So I told Kevin, we don't even like update our Excel spreadsheet. Like, we're never going to do this for ourselves, and no one is ever going to help us market like they're us, unless it's someone that's invested in us. And Jim's amazing at it. And the reality is, like, he needs us to succeed to make the company succeed. So why wouldn't we do this? And we did. And there were a lot of things that worked extremely well with that play. And I think it kind of goes back to my original transition from Taylor Rankin to Caldwell Banker to go under Jim. I had another transition in the middle of that, and then I transitioned here, and then, so that I think was my 4th transition. Keep up, because it keeps going.
God, so you're not afraid of change, it seems. Right?
I think I think like a lot of things in life, I think you can't be afraid of change, and it's exciting. Yeah. You know, I mean, I think there's a balance. It pushes you.
But this is important for your entire career. Your story is that the power of you and the business that you do, your brand and your sphere, goes with you. If you're working at the Sotheby's, or you're working at Coldwell Banker, now you're with Compass, it seems to be that your career has always gone on the same trajectory as up. So that's just a testament to how well you do the business.
Well, thank you. I think it's for me, I think every one of those moves, with probably one exception, which by the way took me which is when I transitioned to new construction, but it was a great move. But that was a little bit of a dollar sign. Like, this sounds really great. Of course, nothing's as good as it sounds. But all my other ones were, I felt that we could grow the business, but again, we're not going to do it internally. We need that outside source. It's like trying to get back in shape without a trainer. Like, let's face it, like when the alarm goes off at 6:30 in the morning, there's a few times you're just going to go back to bed. But if you're paying someone and you have to be there, you know, I might not get there at 7 like I'm supposed to, but I'll be there by 7:15. So for us, that was the key. Yeah, it was. I felt like the team needed it, whether the team was just me individually or whether it was 2 of us or 10 of us. So it's worked.
Well, Mattia, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So you mentioned, you kind of foreshadowed what's coming. We want to get to where you are now, but there's another step in between, which you just mentioned, which is new construction. So after Beasley, what happened?
Oh, good question. So actually, I'm going to completely rewind for a second and say that. So I mentioned, like, I went I was under Jim's team, and then I went on my own. And I think I was on my own / really only a few months until Rita joined me. So while it was always Trent. I mean, I couldn't do anything without Rita. For about a year and a half, and of course, remember, I got into real estate because I like to buy real estate. So I, of course, this was this is 03. So like 02, 03, especially 03, 04, and 05 is when everyone was just buying pre-construction condos, and some of them were just selling them right away. I mean, Max and I'm sure Max did. I know I did. I made a decent amount of money by clients buying, and then they went to settlement, and like a week later it was on the market, and then a month later it was sold, and next thing you know, we got 2 commissions on the same address in like 90 days. With that said, I bought a new pre-construction from McWilliams Ballard, from one of my very, very best friends. So big shout out, because anyone that knows him loves him, Dave Klimas, who was their number one agent. I know you guys had Tamar, and by the way, Tamar would say the same, but Tamar, I love you. Your podcast was amazing, by the way. That's why I almost didn't come today. I listened to it last night. And he's so much prettier than I am. So I only did it because it's not video. Yeah. So, but Dave will sell anything. And so, of course, after he met me, he's like, you got to come you got to come. And this is when McWilliams Ballard, who's huge, was like, they had like 4 or 5 salespeople. I think they might have had a few more, but not a lot. Definitely 10 or under. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. I like what I'm doing. But fast forward, at some point I don't remember, I think it was a couple months. Actually, it was probably longer than that. But either way, it was in remember this. It was the June, July of 2003. I met with the principals of McWilliams Ballard, and they're like, which they're very good at, telling you how much you're going to make in a short amount of time, even though it's usually like that 9 months usually turns into like 4 years. But so you got to, take that into consideration. And I was like, oh, what the heck? Let's do it. Let's try it. So I did. So I sold under them for 5 years, which before Compass was the longest I'd ever been at a firm before leaving. And I left because, as I mentioned before, it was a horrible time to be selling new construction. And so this is where I think it's important. So I left, as I said earlier, literally, I think the first couple days, the end of November, first couple days of December, because my kids were born December 13th. So I remember that. And I swore I would never work with a developer again. Like, I was like, all I know is I am not ever working with a developer. Like, this sucks. I'm never doing it. They're assholes. They don't pay. That still might be true to some of them, but not most. By the way, we all can be. So here I am. So, but then I'm up in the little attic, on what is it, 31st Street?
The humbling attic in Georgetown.
The humbling attic in Georgetown. Max is over in the corner, working hard. Jonathan's just what does Jonathan do? I'm not sure. He just has good hair, and Max
has amazing hair still.
Yeah,
and it makes me really angry.
Still, I know, same here. That's why we love Jonathan. And he's making sales, and Kevin and I are selling studios while they're selling $2 million houses. So, but like at that point, this is the first quarter of 2009, and I tell people, Max, I know you'll say the same. I've been doing this for almost 21 years, and it was the worst quarter of my entire career. Like, no one was selling anything. Like, you would get a standing ovation if you just like put something under contract for the week at the meetings. And so I have this young kid who was still in college, who had convinced his parents that they should get into development, called me on a referral. And I was like, well, what else am I going to do? Like, I guess I'll pick this kid up, and here we go. We drive around, and it just snowballed. So, with that said, here I am. And so I think for a lot of agents, I'm known for new construction because I did it for 5 years in McWilliams Ballard. I took my slow transition away from it. And then I spend probably 70% of my days working on new construction. Whatever our volume was, we did I think you said like 258 million last year, which is, by the way, at the end of this year is going to seem like a really big number because we're not going to be there. But basically 50% of our business is new construction. So when I say that, I had a team of 10. Now, granted, 10 of us, 3 are full-time staff, so there's really So yeah, 7. And Deanne, who runs my team, she's out of the country right now. So, or if not, she would probably be here, and I would be afraid because she'd be like giving me signs and telling me not to talk so much, and all these other things. But
It's a podcast. You're literally
I
supposed
know,
to talk.
it's like perfect.
That's it.
I love this. So maybe I can be a guest host someday.
Yeah,
right?
please. Yeah.
Sure.
So anyhow, with that said, Deanne is one of our 7 that brings the volume in, but all the volume she manages is mostly our new construction, which I bring in. So I basically bring in about 50% of the team volume for new construction. Very few little exceptions. And then I do bring in volume for resales, because even when I was at McWilliams-Bauer for 5 years, I always said, like, I was really a general resale agent at heart. At this point, I'm not. I'm a mix. But again, it goes back to my new development stuff. Like, it's my stuff. Like, no one's handing it to me. So I come up with the pricing. I come up with when it's launching. I come up with the layouts. I come up with the finishes. And, I always say, if I have a developer that's like, no, but my place is worth X, Y, and Z, good. Then you need to call someone else. Because last time I checked, I'm not a builder. But if you know more about the pricing of your project than I do, then someone else is probably a much better fit for you. And I say that in a much nicer way, but it's true. So when I have things that aren't selling, like, it's my problem because I took it on, and I'll figure it out. But I'm not that middleman that has to just sit in a trailer or say it's okay that something's overpriced, because I never voice my opinion 12, 18, 24 months in advance. So I'm fine. I own my own business, and I'll take it if I said it. And I mean, I don't know how many times, like almost weekly at this point, where I'm telling my developer, oh, we're not making any money. I'm like, okay, I'm just reminding you, like, here's the pricing I sent you 24 months ago. Like, I know construction costs are higher, but that doesn't mean that the market is, so like, these are the risks that you've taken. But anyhow, so that's kind of where we are. And that's our business. I live in Bethesda. It's kind of a secret. Like, everyone thinks I'm a DC guy, but I am a suburban dad at this point. I
understand that.
Yeah, what you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So
it's the easy life.
It is you know what? I always thought I'd move back to DC, but just not having to park my car through an alley I will probably stay in Bethesda.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Listen, you can name plenty of reasons why coming back to like the city part of the city is not. I got it.
Yeah, you're gonna roll me.
I was looking to move to Bethesda. I was looking to move to Bethesda for when the pandemic started. I had this idea. And then I was really close to making an offer on a house, and I was on the street, and the neighbor across the street was like, hey, are you looking at the house? And I was like, you know what? I can't do this. I have to live in this. I still have to live in the city. This anonymity of living in the city around all these weird people is still kind of the way my brain works.
Yeah.
The suburbs is kind of like you see the exact same people every day.
Oh, every day. Yeah, actually, my neighbors, they're all like my age and older. A lot of them are older, and they're real awesome neighbors. But they started like a happy hour on the porch across the street from me, like during the pandemic. I think it really kicked off like in April of 2020. They still meet every day at 7 p.m. So I either go home at 6:45 or I go home at 8:15, because like I just really don't have time. Not to mention, I can't. Like, if I have like a drink, I'm just done for the rest of the night. I'm gonna have like 10, so that's not good for me. I've stopped doing that. So for multiple reasons, that's a no. But you gotta love the burbs. But if I need someone to get my mail or unlock my gate for the lawn guys, they're there.
Right there.
Yeah, love it.
I just wanted to jump back in and encapsulate what you were talking about with your business now. So yes, when I think of you, and I know other agents think of you, they think of new construction, new condos all over the city. Pick your location. You're working in Columbia Heights, DuPont, Logan Circle, everywhere. Everywhere I see your name, Trent & Co. So how do you maintain such a huge roster of developers? Or is it just a few developers that are doing all these projects? Are you finding the projects? I want you to talk a little bit about all of these aspects.
I think that's a great question. First of all, it's a great question because, again, I'll go back to like 2009. So by the time we were in like 2011, probably 11, 12, and 13, 14 probably, like you get the developers and they use you and they're like, basically in a nice way saying, I can't use you anymore if you don't bring me a deal, right? And it took me a long time to say exactly what I say now, which is I know how to analyze the deals. I know how to make sure you don't overpay. I know how to, and I don't need a dime for those. But you pay me to make you money in the back end. And what you want are two different agents. You need to find a special, someone that specializes in finding off market deals. But by the way, then you need to call me to make sure that they're not just invested in selling that deal, because I turn down, I have developers, probably 50% of the deals, minimum, really probably 65, 70% of the deals that I look at for developers, they don't buy, because I'm like, you're crazy. So, but 100%, I remember sitting basically back in the day at the Sotheby's office, and one of the very big local developers basically just said that to me. And he was, by the way, been known to work with another specific agent for a long time. And I was like, okay, so you're not loyal. This is so just as that's my flashback to say, just like our resale business, almost all of our developer business is repeat and referral. I would say it all is. I told my agents, this is a couple years ago now, when we were having a bad little slow period of probably 6 months, I can't remember. I said, here's the deal. Do you know how many new construction projects are out there with agents that don't know what they're doing? If the market really slows down, we will knock doors on those projects. We never have. Hopefully we never have to. The only reason I would ever do that, and by the way, we have no intention of doing it, that'd be way too much organization on Trent & Co.'s part. And if I said it, Deanne would have it organized tomorrow, but I would not show up. So, but with that said, is just like first-time home buyers, they're so nice, they're so sweet, they're so appreciative. So are first-time developers. So usually they're my favorite. Often it's either the ones that are first time or the ones that are super seasoned on our team, because they are Trent & Co. trained. And I don't mean trained to make my life easier. I mean trained because we're preventing lots of issues in the future. So if that answers some of your questions, you can ask me more then.
So when you're handling, I'm assuming even right now you're handling different developers and different projects at the very moment. So, given the fact that you have all this business, how do you, say you get a new 10-unit project, what's your role of course the developer is calling Trent, but there's no way that you can do, 20 projects at a time and handle everything, the follow-up with agents, the meeting with clients, the buyers, everything. So do you assign a specific agent to be your sort of right-hand man for that specific project, and how do you decide who?
Okay, so this is why this week is very stressful. Deanne's on vacation. This is no lie. People do not believe this when we tell them, but Deanne handles, if we sell 30 projects a year, which give or take we probably do. We do. We, besides Deanne and myself, handle a minimum of probably 25 of them on our own. So it was just, when was it? Sorry, Laura, I can't remember when Laura started exactly. I do. It'll be two. It does. Well, she had a baby, so that's why I can't remember the whole time frame. Point is, it was in 2021. No, 2020. That doesn't matter. Point is, for years, Deanne, and I finally was like, this is ridiculous. You cannot do this all on your own. So we finally hired a contract to close, but just a couple of years ago, until then, Deanne did it all. So she was easily doing 100+ new construction. And by the way, managing our team. I mentioned we have 3 staff, including Deanne, who runs it. The staff reports to her. They don't report to me. Actually, they don't even let me on the calls. They have weekly calls, I think twice a week. And every so often I forget and I call in while they're on. And it is Corey, who runs my marketing, is over there shaking her head. They don't like me to get involved at all. And by the way, I'm fine with it. I'm not a control freak by any means, as long as I know someone can handle it. But so
give
good
a proper
question.
shout out to Deanne Lanning.
Yeah,
she's awesome. She's your number 2.
Yeah, she really is. She's amazing. But I can't shout out to Deanne, my number 2 girl, without my other girl, Kevin Gray. So love you, Kevy.
Oh, Kevin
Gray.
Kevin is still there. It's amazing.
He's just as mature as always, if you know what I mean. So yeah, definitely. And honestly, going back to the new construction, but so we divide it though, and I have for years. So if it's a resale client, Deanne doesn't touch it. So that's it. She's my new construction. All my developers know her. I was on a Zoom call yesterday that we presented 4 developers. We do it a couple times, at least a couple times a quarter. She wrote all my notes for me, etc. Of course, I didn't really read them, but she makes sure I'm very organized when it comes to all of that. But when it comes to our resale business, she knows we have it because she's in charge of the staff, and the staff is the one that's doing the marketing, et cetera. But that's completely separated, and that is primarily Kevin. Unless it's in Maryland, and then it depends on where it is. Mary Noon on my team, who also is my neighbor, who's amazing. She runs most of our Bethesda business. Yeah. And we have a lot of agents in between that do a lot of stuff for me, and they're awesome. We have a great team. Love it.
I was thinking about some of the projects that I visited most recently. You work in some, let's just use the term, emerging locations.
Max, I always say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you'll laugh at this. Like if I've spoken on some panels and I'm like, I'm known for the areas that the first 10 years of my career, I didn't even know they existed. Like literally did not know they existed. So sorry to cut you off, but I thought it's so true.
No, I'm just saying like some of these locations, when I go to them, I'm kind of like, really? And then you're over there with like beautiful new product to sell. It's staged perfectly. All the materials are nice. Are these projects like, let's just say something like a North Capitol in Florida, like right there on North Capitol Street? Are these projects that developers they just bring them to you, or have you found these lots for them? Or let's talk about that again.
Yeah, they bring them to me. I mean, I would say if we sell 30 projects a year, we are involved with like introducing that developer to that project, maybe less. So what, 10%, like less than 10%. Yeah, they're bringing
because that's not really your core business. You're not door knocking. You're not doing mailing campaigns trying to find the old grandma house. That's not really what you do.
No, I mean, I barely have time to return my phone calls as it is. Trust me, if you're my client, you're shaking your head on that one. So, it's not my thing. And the reality is, like, it's almost the opposite the majority of the time. I mean, I get text messages and emails and phone calls, really weekly. Actually, I got 3 just in the last week from people like, hey, I know you do a lot of development work. I've got this deal. And so I will not call anyone. I'm like, send it to me. Here's great. Send me here's my email. And I'll try to look at it. But the reality is most of the time, I don't even forward them on because they're ridiculously overpriced, right? So, and if I think that they have some skin on them, what I do typically is I'll send them to one of the go-to architects that a lot of my developers work on, and they'll analyze them, and then I'll look at them before I send them, because if I just send them on, like it's just going to take more of my time.
Right.
So I will do that all day long. And every so often, this happens probably at least once a year, where I'll have someone that have come to me, and like a year later, someone of my developers bought it, and I'm like, oh, I could have made money on that. But I'm like, the money I would have made with all the time involved to have made that sale happen it's so not worth it. So I do have some really good, knowledgeable new construction, like agents that know new construction on my team. So if I have something that I think is worthwhile, I bring them in immediately. Yeah.
What's your... Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, go ahead, Mattia.
In all of this, what's your, most thrilling, energizing part of your work and your least favorite?
So I'll tell you, my most energizing is floor plans. Like, my biggest client, by far, biggest client from a development and from a connector standpoint, who's always like introducing me to new developers, on the email will say, Trent's best asset is getting involved from the beginning. So I spend a lot of time with the plans. Sometimes the architects hate me. They're used to me a lot now, but I'm like, no, like we can't have this, or multiple things. I could go with plenty of examples, but we all know. But I enjoy it, and I'm good at it. That's probably my favorite thing. My most relaxing, which I rarely do, and I actually was doing it. I actually helped this week because everyone's on vacation. Is we basically have our own staging company. It's like I on paper lose probably $150,000 a year on it, but it was very confusing. Who's meeting the movers and who's this and who's that? So next thing I know, like I'm there. This is Monday morning, and I'm like organizing bookshelves for someone, and I was like, this is why Mary on my team who stages and sells a lot. This is why she loves it. This is so like you're just moving things around. You leave, you feel like you've accomplished something. You can listen to a podcast. But then I was like, Mary, you need to come help me because I'm going to be here all day and I am so going to be late for my next morning appointment that I'm going to actually make money on. So definitely the moving around of the furniture. Corey knows, she's looked at me. If Corey's like, I might buy a new chair, like I won't respond back to her email about something that she wants me to do a marketing campaign on, but I'll send her like 5, go to this link and whatever it may be. So it's definitely the staging is a calming thing. I don't get involved with it on site very often. I do spend probably a good 10% of my time every week, if not more, coming up with the logistics because we stage 2 to 3 days a week every freaking week. I'm telling you, we stage 45 to 50 weeks a year. We have movers, and it's rarely do we have movers only one day for the week. So there's a lot of management trying to figure out where the furniture's coming from, and and my stager's amazing, but I'm like, honey, she's like, oh, I don't want to bother you. I'm like, well, have you ever seen the property? No. So when you get there, you're going to turn it into amazing. And by the way, have you ever seen the bills? Because if it takes an extra trip to go get the right sofa because it's too small, I'm the one that pays for that. So I'm going to get on this right now. And by the way, we turn all of our staging around that afternoon, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to stage 2 condos in this building and you're going to show up at noon and you basically have to be done at 5 and the photos are tomorrow morning. So you got to be really organized. So it's, most people on my team would tell me it's a waste of time and I shouldn't be doing it. But the problem is we have gotten so big with it that our business we would be in big trouble if we didn't have it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the big value adds for your group is that every time you walk into one of your listings, it's staged attractively, it's consistent, but you have full control over that. I think that's why your clients keep coming back to you because they know that's going to be taken care of. It's not going to be who's paying for staging? How's it going to look? And I know that I know some of your developers are probably like, oh, I want it to look like this. And I'm guessing from your personality, you're like, no, I got it.
We have a really big one, which I don't try to. We do like a couple of year tops, and the ones that try to get too involved in staging at this point, they need to hire their own stager, right? Because I know we're good, and I know you guys know how it is. Like, if they're like, oh, I don't know about this stuff, I'm like, if I put it there and I didn't have it changed out, that means it's good. It is exactly what we need, and honestly, it's better. And by the way, when it's not selling for 6 months, like what I charge you, which is basically a reimbursement of the moving fees, like that's what they are. Or you can go out and spend $50,000. I don't care. I mean, I have very few developers that do their own staging, and let me tell you, I love it because it's so much less work. But you're right. But if we don't do it and do it right and control it, and our big thing was we got into it without getting all into a staging conversation, but this started, gosh, now it's been 10 years ago. And it was, and anyone that's been in new construction, I know you all do a lot, and Max, I know you do them as well, as they didn't want to pay the right price for staging. It was I already like negotiating the staging. And then the stager shows up, and of course it's new construction. Do you think it's going to be ready? No. And the stager's like, I'm not dropping my furniture off. And the developer's like, well, come back tomorrow. She's like, no, basically, F you. I'll be back next Tuesday. And the developer's like, well, we got to get on the market. And I'm like, finally, I was like, I'm done. Like I just spent my entire afternoon negotiating like this is ridiculous. So as much time as I say I spend less time and with a lot more control than I did back then. Again, it's just now it's grown so much that when you like all expenses, once you start them and they excel, you're like, wow, that's a lot of money. Yeah, but it's all good.
So in all of this, different changes of firms and offices, and did you have a mentor?
That's a good question. I would say over the 21 years, I really haven't had like a mentor that I think I've tried to model after. I really haven't. I think going back to when I first made that transition or first got into real estate, I could say Umberto was a little bit more my mentor, and Jim was a little bit more of was more of a mentor. But and I won't say they weren't, but it was both. They were both short lived. So as far as me I've done it all kind of on my own. At this point, I don't know if it's a mentor, but hands down, and I will definitely do a shout out, Holly Worthington, who's my broker. Like I've worked with some really great people, but I have never, ever loved and needed someone in this business like her. Like she's amazing, but it especially for me. So she is my, as far as I'm concerned, she's my everything in real estate. Where Holly is, Trent will be. So, and I've never said that up until my experience with Holly, and that is over at Compass. Though Holly's worked for many, or not many, she worked for Long and Foster for like 30 years. But I mean, she's awesome. So that would be number one, and then number two, I call my biggest client Brian Athey. I will do a shout out. I don't know if he'll listen to this podcast. Maybe he will now that he knows he's here. But Brian Athey, who runs a hard money business, and that's how I met him. And I was the first and the only agent he's ever worked with. He's amazing. There's no one that is more disciplined in everything in life. And so he's definitely, I would say, a mentor at this point. And again, like probably though, I would say hasn't been a mentor over 10 years, but over the last 5 years, and probably the same with Holly. So I would say the first out of 20 years, it took me 15 to find 2 people that I literally like need in my daily business life. So there you go. Yeah.
So you obviously had a stellar career. You made a lot of decisions.
Why do you say had?
No.
Oh, I think you said had.
I'll rephrase that.
Okay.
You have a stellar
My last
career.
day. Okay.
You've made a lot of decisions, moving from different firms, trying out different things, building this business. But if there's anything you could tell young Trent when young Trent was just starting out, although it seems like you had like a natural nose for real estate right away, buying investment properties, buying your own place, what would you tell young Trent if you could start over again from that point?
The only thing that I would say, and I said this a lot, like your number like 5 to 10, what is or was and is, and what I would share to people is, you're in the business, like you need to be buying real estate and owning it. And yes, owning rental property sometimes really sucks. I've got an AC unit that's out right now, and but there is no better way to build wealth. And if you're in this business, what that probably means is you like money and you like to spend money. And if you say that's not you, guess what? It will be. And after a certain amount of years, and maybe that's just on buying an expensive house or, cars or, furniture, or whatever it may be. So like, it is such a forced way to save, and it will appreciate. And if it never appreciates, as I tell clients, like, I don't buy properties for them to appreciate. I don't buy properties to like bring money in every month. I buy them so someone else is paying down my mortgage, because I like to have nice things. And I'm not a big spender in general, but we live in a very expensive location, so you need money, and you don't want to stop having that lifestyle when you retire someday, if you do retire. And so start buying real estate and don't stop. What I said about my only mistake I have said several times was I started selling real estate and stopped buying real estate for a period because I was finding them all for my clients. And so that's my only thing. I just don't. Who cares if a tenant's a pain in the butt? You're a pain in the butt too. Like, you're making money. Like, stick with it. Stick with it. So I'm a big fan of that. And that would be my only big advice is and my team. If you're on my team, I think I have one agent on my team who's been in the business for a long time that did not own a rental property, just finally closed on one. I'm big into like on top of my team about stuff like that because part of it is I don't want them to show up at my door wanting to go sell real estate in 20 years because they still need money. Though I would probably do it. So there.
Well, Trent, thanks so much for coming on today, and we appreciate all the great things you told us. Again, awesome career. I've known you for so long. Like, we've pretty much been in the same time frame, same business for all these years, and it's just so great to know you. You're one of the most respected people in the entire community, and again, just really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Great to have you.
Thanks for my upgrade, Brent. My upgraded Brent.
Yes, I know, right? A better version. No, just kidding, Brent.
Well, now upgraded Brent, Mattia is going to hit you with the rapid fire questions.
Oh,
5
here we go. You're
fire
gonna find out
questions.
I'm really boring off mic. Okay.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Oh, guilty pleasure would be probably, you know what, I don't do it very often, but ice cream. I love ice cream. Yeah.
What flavor?
Peppermint, like anything with
Ooh,
peppermint in it.
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. What's your to-go drink, and where are you having it in DC?
So first of all, it used to be anywhere, but now I'm very particular. So if I'm going to drink, it's going to have to be a good cab.
Okay.
And I got to shout out to the Cab Grill because they have the best wine in Washington.
Nice. Favorite hobby?
Everything real estate. I mean, truly, like I don't do a lot of outside hobbies, but by the way, did I say I have 13-year-old twin girls? So they're kind of my extra if I'm not buying real estate, renovating houses, building a house, which we're getting ready to do again, it's arguing or having fun with my children. It's kind of split 50-50. And I definitely have taken up running in the last 2 years. So I do some half marathons.
But two 13-year-old girls, that's intense.
Let me tell you, one of them, I told her, if you're not going to be a lawyer, then you need to stop practicing on me. And my other one, I really don't want her to be in real estate, but like she is me. So we'll see.
God.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Last
Sweet.
live concert?
Oh, you know what? I don't go to concerts, so it's just not my thing. I'm the complete opposite of Max, if you haven't noticed. But I did splurge for 2 of my team members, and it's my first time I've done anything like this. And I did it myself, and I went in June to Chelsea Handler live. I love Chelsea Handler. Yeah. So if she's on this podcast, I do have to join. I'm just saying that.
If Chelsea Handler's listening to this podcast, that'd be pretty cool.
I love you, Chelsea.
So.
I'll go topless too. Okay.
Yeah, that's funny. And then finally, coffee with Oprah or Obama?
Oh, Oprah. I mean, I grew up with Oprah. I mean, Obama's a great guy, but really, Oprah all day long.
Nice.
Well, Trent, thanks again. We always give a donation to the charity of our guest choice. Anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I got a shout out to DC Wise and my girl Deanne, who's like on the board. And by the way, and everyone there, it's amazing, as we all know. And I know a lot of the board members, and for sure, DC Wise.
Nice.
DC Wise. You got it.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks.
Trent.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at keyedinpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.